What's up, everybody? Dan Greer, Eclipse DOT, coming at you today from my truck. Actually, I got to show you this. Shink. I'm going to zoom in on it. That is the coolest picture I've seen on the side of a building. And that's actual, like, they did so good because they put real rock on it. And then they did the picture. I know. Pretty cool, right? I'm sitting here chilling, and I was thinking about short haul exemption. So I kind of went over, you got to stay within a 150 air mile radius. You got to start and stop in the same spot every single day. Got to be back to the same spot you started within 14 hours. Now, a question I get a lot is like, Dan, we have multiple yards, or like, I move locations and I'll spend a week in that location. Can I still qualify for short haul exemption? The short answer is yes, you totally can still qualify for it. The thing is you wouldn't qualify for it on the day that you don't end in the same location that you started. So let's say that I have an office in Durango, Colorado. Okay, boom, there's my office, Durango, Colorado. And let's say that 90% of the time I'm here. But I get a job in Alamosa, and I'm going to go spend 2 weeks in Alamosa, which is 3 hours away. No big deal. Okay, no big deal. All right, so I go to Alamosa. I do my job over there. I spend a week too. Oh my gosh. I'm yawning. I never yawn on videos. I'm so sorry, guys. Maybe Jeremy will cut that out. We'll see how good he is. He's my video editor. He's amazing, by the way. He could probably cut it out. Knowing him, he would leave that next part in there, though, that says Jeremy's amazing. I digress. Anyways, so let's say I go to Alamosa, 3 hours away. I do that job. I spend a week over there doing that job. The day that I go to Alamosa and I stay over there, so like let's say I drive over there on a Sunday, that day I am not short haul. I would have to run a paper log for the day that I go over there, and I would have to show my 34-hour reset before that on paper log as well, or have my time cards with me to show that I'm not over my hours. Okay. And then when I come back from Alamosa to Durango to come home, that would be another day when I have to run a paper log. So like let's say that the day that I go over there and the day I come back would be the only 2 days I run a paper log. Now the key to this is in order to qualify for not having an ELD in your truck, you can still use short haul exemption if you have an ELD in your truck. But in order to not have an ELD, you have to do a paper log less than 8 times in a 30-day cycle. And that's a running 30-day cycle. It never stops. And what that means is that if you're using the short haul exemption and you do cross outside of those boundaries, like let's say that it's the first of the month, we'll just say it's day 1. Okay, I make a trip on day 1, I make a trip on day 3 that takes let's say I make a trip on day 1 that takes it, I make a trip on day 5 that takes a logbook, I make a trip on day 8 that takes a logbook, I make a trip on day 10 that makes a logbook. We're up to 4 times. I make a trip on day 12 that takes a logbook. I make a trip on day 15 that takes a logbook. That's 5, 6. Okay, I make a trip on day 20 that takes a logbook. That's 7. I make a trip on day 29 that takes a logbook. That's 8. I'm still qualify for ELD exemption. Okay, I can do all of that on paper logs without any issues. Now I make a trip on day 31. Okay, remember I took a trip on day 1. Okay, that was out of it. So when I make a trip on day 31, I'm still at 8. Okay, now my next trip was on day 5, and so if I take a trip on day 34, I now have to have an ELD in my truck because within that 30-day cycle, I have made 9 trips by one day off. Okay. Now this is tied to the driver, not to the vehicle. So if you've got extra drivers and you're crazy smart, you'll be like, yo, Joe, you need to take this load because Bob's already at 8 days and he needs another 2 days to knock 2 days off his. Crazy yawns are coming on me. I don't know what the heck's going on. Still catching up from like no sleep one day. I didn't get home until like 1:30 a.m. and it's not very late. It's like 8 p.m. But you know, I'm like a chicken. When the sun goes down, I go to sleep. When the sun comes up, I wake up. Back to short haul exemption. With the short haul exemption, it's just one of those things where if you're smart, you can swap drivers in the truck. It's not tied to the truck. How many times the truck goes out, it's tied to the driver. How many times the driver goes out. So you could actually switch drivers to make loads if they're going to go out for multiple times. Just an idea. It's a thought. It's something to keep in mind. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're learning a lot about some of these exemptions, some of this stuff. We're going to cover more later, but I'm too tired. I got to get some sleep. My daughter has to drive me home with her permit pretty soon. All right. Catch you guys later. Later.